This is my second session on future of Islamic banks. In this session, I will discuss that future of Islamic banks depends on Islamic banking that they do. Future of Islamic banks depends on how much they contribute to real Islamic banking. The current practice of Islamic banking is not really Islamic banking. Let us not mince the words. Islamic banking currently is the name of providing conventional banking products with documentation that does not violate, at least in letter, certain specific Sharia rules. This is a very narrow concept of Islamic banking. In this narrow concept of its practice, the future of Islamic banking, in fact, has already been determined. Islamic banks have done a very good job how to do this Islamic banking. Now any bank can do it. It is no more relevant whether Islamic banks do it or conventional banks do it. Conventional banks have a comparative advantage because of their economies of scale, their wide domestic and international networking, and the regulatory authorities being on their side. So conventional banks can do it better, and they are showing it that they can do it better. They are therefore likely to take over the Islamic banking market wherever there is demand for the Islamic banking. Hence, Islamic banking future now will depend on the demand for this Islamic banking in this narrow sense, not on Islamic banks. But how much is the demand for this Islamic banking in this narrow sense? In the OIC world, where Islamic banks exist side by side with the conventional banks, Islamic banks could capture only 8% of the banking market, and I mean the commercial banking market. During the last 40 years, this is the share they got. And according to my estimates, it is very unlikely that this share may increase more than 10% in any foreseeable future. Statistics have shown that Islamic banks have caused the statistics have in fact not yet shown that Islamic banks have caused substantial switching of the deposits from conventional banking to Islamic banking, or have created new depositors for Islamic banks. We also know that wherever Islamic banks have been established side by side with the conventional banks in the densely populated Muslim cities in Muslim dominant countries, there was no rush to join Islamic banks. This is a clear reflection of the fact that something more is expected from Islamic banking beyond what they are currently doing. Note this: those who wanted to do their economic and financial activities according to Islamic principles were never short of interest-free options. If there was any popular demand for Islamic banks, then it was for something much beyond having some Sharia-compatible banking products to do some financial transactions. It was expected that Islamic banking in the broader sense would show the true spirit of Islamic financial system. This was the expectation from the Islamic banking. Islam has a distinct legal and ethical framework for conducting economic and financial transactions. Islamic banking was expected to facilitate financial intermediation within this framework for the purpose of contributing to overall economic objectives of the system. Islamic banking, in this broader sense, can be done only by Islamic banks. Conventional banks cannot be expected to do this. Hence, my conclusion for this session is that future of Islamic banking depends on Islamic banks. And I'm referring to the future of real Islamic banking. It depends on Islamic banks, not on conventional banks. Future of Islamic banks, on the other hand, depends on how much real Islamic banking they are willing to do. Why only Islamic banks can do the real Islamic banking? It is because Islamic banking requires an understanding of economic objectives of Sharia and economic spirit of Islamic economic and financial principles, and a commitment to applying Sharia rules and norms not merely in form but in substance and in spirit as well. Only Islamic banks can do this. Conventional banks cannot do this because they are committed to something else, which is the interest-based banking. To play this real role for Islamic banking, Islamic banks need to do two things collectively. One, make sure that they are not marginalized by competition from conventional banks and that their presence makes a difference and a distinction in the market. Two, develop a long-term strategy to do Islamic banking in its true spirit, to show a banking paradigm that will be efficient, equitable, stable, and conducive to economic development. In my next program, I will talk about the first issue: how to earn a distinction in the market while competing with commercial banks in doing Islamic banking. I repeat, how Islamic banks can earn a distinction in the banking market while competing with commercial banks in doing Islamic banking. Let us discuss it in the next session.